Hello, my monstrosities. Hello once again. Today I bring to you, somehow, another Harbor video. Yes, I really did not expect to talk about Harbor this much, ever, in general. But I had an epiphany when I did the last agent design issue video. Um, the one before this one, because I've figured that I'll probably make another one in due time, and I might have years ago. But either way, I had an epiphany about Harbor, and we might owe Riot an apology because on paper they did everything right. So Harbor, we've seen it as, oh, they just made a worse Omen, and previously he was the other wall smoker like Viper, and then it's like he had damn near all of his abilities did wall. Okay. However, um, now they gave you one Omen smoke and one Viper-esque wall. So, in theory, Harbor should be good. And in theory, I've been cooking some in theory shit, and well, cooking is putting it nicely. There's some in theory shit that I think isn't that bad in relation to Harbor. But as you can see, I have this page labeled niches, right? And not only did they fill what Omen and Viper have, they took it to the factor of what they do special. But there are downsides, unfortunately. And somehow also upgrades. So when you put all of this together, how is it that we're down on Harbor? So with Omen, not only do you have an orb smoke, you have a smoke that can be placed pretty much anywhere on the map, and is really good at making one-ways. Because you have that targeter to know that, hey, it can sit here and become a one-way on this little ledge here that not many of the other controllers have access to. Then you take Viper, who has wall. Only controller in the game outside of Astra Ult and now Harbor that can block off so many sight lines at once by throwing this motherfucker all the way across. Now, I've long said that unfortunately for Harbor, and I think a lot of us have said that, is that he has to be in place to do his stuff, right? Which is why they changed the smoke, the cove. And that's true, right? But also looking at games, it isn't always feasible that the team executing has both omen smokes up. In fact, sometimes, a lot of time, they're working with picking one part to smoke the most and going. Because unless you're playing the fast style of boom, everybody go now. For some of the rounds that take longer, you'll see that we're not waiting for all of the smokes in the world to be up because there's been a pick or something to work with. And coming back over to Viper, Viper is pretty good in the sense that you can block off multiple sight lines at the same time and control when it goes up and down. Now, once again, this should be good in relation to Harbor. Because yes, while Viper typically has the capability to throw this wall, right? Throw this wall and be over here. A lot of the time, the Viper is still here because we are using the excuse of, oh, don't worry, the Viper is creating pressure, even when doesn't have to be. And the Vipers, really like to be planted here, so they can work with this area. Now, the benefit to this is that, as you can see, Viper can be here and the wall goes up. However, Harbor would have to still be here to put that same wall. So, yes, the following thing that I'm about to argue on behalf of Harbor is true, but also there is a hard issue in front of it too. Because a lot of the time, while it is unfortunate that Harbor has to be around, it's unfortunate that Brimstone has to be around, Clove has to be around to place the smokes for the site. If you look, even when it is Astra or Omen throughout the games, they're probably still with their team here, right? They're probably still around, unless you are treating the Omen or the Astra as the lurker. But that's not every team anymore. Uh, we're past those days where it's always Omen. Sometimes it's looking like even Chamber at this point, right? Well, I shouldn't say even. Chamber's been a lurker for a while, but you know, we've seen Sentinels take over that spot when the controller player, that's not their thing. So, yeah, it's odd that Harbor has to be around to place the wall, just like Brim and Clove have to be around, but it also shouldn't affect anything. So, with all that, when you take two of the most played smokers, two of the most played controllers, don't smoke. Why is it that when you take both of their kits and put it together into one agent, it doesn't work? Well, first, I want to argue maybe it does. As hard as I've been on it and as hard as everybody else has been on it, maybe it does. And even maybe as a solo. I know. Um, Now, I'm less sold on the solo capability of Harbor. However, if we have made Brim work, and if we do make Clove work in ranked, there's a possibility that somebody, some agent, with not only a wall that can be curved. So, like, there's even added benefits on top of the things that he stole, right? So, Harbor has the orb smoke that can be placed globally and one way, but it also can become tanky. Kind of. I think it still needs more health on it, but you can stop bullets from the outside. Viper, you can throw a wall just like Viper, but you get to curve that motherfucker. That way it isn't just like, oh, well, I hope we can make do with that. No, you can actually curve it to go zoop. Actually, I guess I should draw. Let's do a drawing. Right? You can actually curve it to do something like that. Don't do that one. That's bad. But closer. Right? You can do that. You can do that. So, in that regard, it's kind of interesting that the problem becomes only having one of each of those things. It's too much on each one to make each one more than once, except for the fact that the wall, previously we've worked with it being more than once. We have. So I think Riot might have been cooking, and I see why they only gave him one of each thing. But let's talk a little bit further about some of the other things. Starting with Cove again. So, like I said, there's been some possible cookage I've been thinking of with Cove, and I've already talked about this one with Waylay, right? We're just, is Haven the best one? Let's actually go to Split for a second to talk about this. So, Waylay's been on Split, and now you have protection for Waylay to dash into here, set this here, and instead of immediately, well, this is also because waylays are still awful. Um, you need to know when to press the button. It's Yoru all over again. You don't have to press the fucking button. But since everybody aims and doesn't think, you double dash into here, and now you just know that you can control this while this is up, and you can possibly even be in here until it breaks, which is different from Jet, where Jet would have a smoke double dash in here and somebody could challenge you and now you're just fighting in here as Jet. But as Harbor, with Harbor and a Waylay, if anything goes wrong, you could come back, and if everything goes right, you can stay. And you can't get spammed if, well, you can get spammed, but you can't get spammed immediately out of it if the Harbor decides to harden his cove. You have to commit to being inside of there. Now, with that, there's also these other two agents that I have some degree of, I guess so. By making it so that you have to be inside of the code, let's put that back again, um, there does come the challenge of how far you put it while making sure that you retain control. And thankfully, a Sky can flash inside of it to make sure that nobody's in there, or if it's let's actually do that, or if it's something like this, so that you can stop spam from from there, from across the way, depending on where you are. Get a trailblazer through, or maybe you are trailblazing and you want the spam to not catch the trailblazer. You want them to have to commit while you commit to clearing this hard here. But it can also be going through to obtain information. Sorry, I don't know if you could hear the background, but that caught me off guard real quick. So that's just one application of code. Well, that's two actually. But then we come to veto, and why would chokehold be amongst this listing of abilities in regards to Cove? Now, this comes off of an idea that I heard, and I'll say that I think I first heard it from Anders, even though, well, the application further. Like, I was thinking about it, but I wasn't thinking enough about it, I guess. Same thing as to with Sky. Let's go back here. If I need to know that that's safe, I can throw that in there. Kind of like Fade. Fade could also throw it in there and immediately know that it's safe, right? Well, only for the immediate moment know that it's safe. But now, if I throw chokehold inside of a coved cove, I now have control of that spot until this chokehold gets broken. I will now know if they're coming out of heaven with that information. Now, that comes off of, the whole idea of throwing your trip, a throwable trip. And you can even take it steps further. Let's go back to Haven and let's flip it to defense just to, oh, that's new. Sorry. I hadn't used this Icarus since the update. But let's take this And now that they've made it so that this can't be spammed on top of that, you, I guess, really have to fight for this. But you throw that, and then you throw that, and now you just have control of window while you walk down to know if, and you could stay here until the time tells you, oh, somebody is taking this from you, and you have the ability to watch all of mid and just obtain this information. Now, mind you, you could also, in some way, be chamber, right? We could try this with chamber. We can't. Chamber has to be here. And chamber trip will probably be here, or, somewhere over maybe garage, maybe. Um, but you still won't know when you're about to face danger with window, so you have to kind of be on a pivot for both of these angles. Thanks to a cove immediately making it so that you can get the trip in there. If they haven't dealt with it in the first few seconds, maybe you also do that. Maybe you've done this to delay them in the way that any default would. Um, maybe, just maybe, you can have control of that forever and ever and ever, right? You just now know that the attacking team has not gone that far. And you could do it once they fix the fucking jump throw. You could do it even to places more aggressively deep. Do that here, right? So, looking at Cove's applications, I do know that, well, I do believe that if we are to look at it as a, if anybody wants to get kooky and try to push Harbor as a solo controller, probably won't be looking at those, but I think we can still agree he's best as a secondary controller. So, that means you could do even quirkier things. You want to stop heaven spam while you all execute here? Yeah, that's one thing. Or you completely sell the fake because, again, oftentimes, often enough times, I'm not going to say it's every time, often enough times, the team is only working with one smoke. So while you have somebody like an Omen also to really sell it, your team could be selling the shit out of anywhere because let's say you have Omen smoke these, right? Smoke these. You could also still as Harbor just wall some bullshit and the team just doesn't know where the fuck is going on. Just wall some random bullshit. So having a second smoker that adds to the first is probably where it gets dangerous. Um, so that's to say that Cove has applications that are being underexplored and they might have cooked by making it global, even if it is just one. I think it still needs more health on the tankiness, though, so that's something. Let me come over to Reckoning. The worst Reckoning. But it solves some duelist issues. Some duelist issues. Um, Maybe not even issues, but it has interesting interactions, I guess. So, Reckoning, near sight slow. You go, oh boy, it's going to do it. It's going to do the thing. But how can I use near sight in a way that anybody gives a fuck? Thing number one that I was thinking about is that it has the 7 meters, is it 7.5, 7 meters of being in range with near sight, being in range of somebody near sight that they can still see you. But they can't hear you. And what if you are 7 meters in the 7+ meters vertically away from them? And what if you had an agent that could hover? So, say that you are on retake A Haven, right? Something along these lines, or wherever the hell. Where you throw this nowadays? I don't really know to cover every real angle, I guess. Guess you just have to go for this and hope that nobody's there. But you could be still bringing the Omen to do that. However, uh, we'll just leave it to Harbor and Jet exclusively for this. Harbor, Reckoning the site, nearsighted. Let's put an enemy Brim Viper raise. Sure. They're nearsighted, and you have your jet dash out of heaven, float down, maybe updraft if needed again. They can't see a jet in the sky at these places. They can't. So while everybody's worried about, oh, I still have to come through here, Jet would just be hovering and knife, knife, knife. And they can't see it. They just can't do anything about that. So the best thing is to just not get hit by it. And I guess now okay, there we go. Cool. So, in that aspect, you have arguably a better ult in some cases. Like, I think it is now a side grade because you have something like that where you can't do much about. Neon, all commonly paired with Fade Nightfall because you get the decay and you get the deafen. So you can't hear Neon stomping around to get to you. However, the thing is, you can still see, and people in this game have gotten good. So, you can still hold the angle, and once the Neon passes, bam. However, looking at a Reckoning, now speed is again the name of the game. You can still hold it close, but oftentimes once teams hear the Neon popped ult, they'll still be, let's bring Brimstone back, fuck it. Seem to be taking L's lately. Um, they'll hold here. They'll hold around a wall, a corner, because they aren't that confident in trying to 1v1 a Neon close. So they'll do it from further and just hold the angle. And then once the Neon does get to that angle, pop. However, if you are nearsighted, the thing that you have to do while nearsighted is play close, not far. So Neon has applications here. And you might see, why do I have ISO? Well, much to the same extent of Neon, you have an agent that tells you when they are better than you, has the shield active. It makes a sound, you'll know that it's happening. However, if they're deafened in some aspect and they can't see, so they need to play close, um, good luck getting two headshots on a ISO that you didn't hear pop shield and is coming at you at a rapid pace. So, gets going. Oh, wait, I'm nearsighted. Bop. I win that exchange. Keep to do my ISO bullshit. So, New Reckoning, you could argue that ISO could do that with Nightfall already, and I'd say that's true. However, again, the thing that it has over Reckoning is you could just still hold the angle with Reckoning. I'm sorry, with Nightfall. You can still hold this angle with Nightfall. Nothing really changed. With Reckoning, you cannot. You will not be able to just watch this angle from here. Now, mind you, if you do it from here, I guess that's about a 50-50, right? A more desirable angle, but your timing is really tight and doesn't allow for a plan B when you are facing a duelist with a shield or going zoom zoom. So, even New Reckoning has some things about it that just aren't being looked at. And that's just, I'm picking three. I'm sticking to three for, as you can see, um, just sticking to three things. There's more, but figure three was keeping it light. And I want to wrap it up with Storm Surge. Storm Surge being the near sight that now can go through walls. Doesn't have a wall line of sight, I guess. So you can do it here and catch the. Sorry, Brim. Um, Catch the Brim here, right? Instead of having to. What we were. Nobody was trying this, but have to throw it in there. Now, you throw it against here. That Brim is nearsighted. You clear fucking garage. And the near sight has several things over the other near sight abilities, like one off abilities, in the game. If Brim is back here, who were you nearsighting him with? Nobody. That wasn't reaching. Okay, that's not reaching anymore. You have to get the latch and attack. So with a prowler for the near sight, and Brim has to look at it for this one. Also, again, these two can be destroyed pretty quickly. So the Reina Eye, Lear, pop that if you are looking at it pretty quickly, right? Before it takes full form or whatever. And hell, even after it takes form, but be careful, right? If you're actually holding it, it's like, all right, I need to get the. Let's actually switch to somebody else. Who would be holding C long? Let's give it to a Chamber. Chamber's also taking an L lately, um, in the lore. So you have Chamber, Headhunter. Sorry, uh, the Tour de France, Tour de Force. There we go. Tour de Force. Holding C long. Yeah, there's this right. This would kind of work in some aspect. Um, what if the chamber is holding a different weird angle for in case of flashes? But yeah, he pops that with Headhunter. Bam. All right. Boom. Done. Okay. Prowler. We have chased many a chamber off with Prowler, but a lot of pros are also really bad at Prowler, so they go, all right, that one's clear. And instead of trying to curve or anything, they just go, all right, boom. All right, here's my second one. All right, I'm out of Prowlers. It's like you know you're against Chamber right now, right? Um, but so Prowler's down. Lear is not workable, and you can't reach him with Paranoia. What is the other option? You could be flashing, but you could try, right? Chamber could turn it. You can't turn a near sight anymore now that they fixed it to go through walls. But you can hit the lineup and make sure that anybody back there playing that corner is nearsighted and advance. If he was playing on top, you can land it here. If he was playing behind it, you can still land it here. And now that they again fixed the fact that it can go through walls, uh, getting it on top of the box, they will still be nearsighted if they were holding back here. So Storm Surge has decent applications. Now, a lot of us are focused on the slowing aspect of it because it doesn't slow enough, right? Uh, but at the same time, now you can reasonably use it to clear something close here. And if they did try to move, it's going to take them a second longer to get to that angle that they might have wanted. Uh, I don't know if you can throw it here and catch across there. I would imagine so, but sometimes gaps make things weird. So if your team's standing over here, you throw it there. bam, and then have again Omen Paranoia probably for hell. This person now, if this works, um, can't just swing wide and hold. They can't. They're going to be slowed. So that's some benefits to Storm Surge that the other near sights didn't have. And on that, that's another thing that they tried to fill. You look at the things that can nearsight in the game that aren't an ult, and even then, uh, it's funny that both of the agents that are combined here, both of their ults, well, Viper's ult does nearsight, and Omen has Paranoia on nearsight. But you look at the roster, probably needed more nearsight, right? Like before New Harbor, you had Omen, technically Viper's Pit, uh, but that's only if you're in it. Reyna, I, Fade, Chomp, and there is no Sentinel with near sight. So, they did try to add more of that in the game too. So they added more near sight, they added another one way smoker, they added another wall smoker, and gave him more things. And somehow, it isn't seen as enough. Because Harbor is the second controller. That's not first, which means that he is a fifth agent slot in the way that I describe those of who is the, all right, after you have one of each, what is taking that fifth slot? And now Harbor not only is in competition with a Viper, but is in competition with, I know, a Breach, in competition with Teho or Fade, for depending on which one was the initial, right? Is in well, I guess I should say in competition with a Teho, a KO, a Breach is in competition with. Well, we're not doing Double Sentinel right now, but you might eventually in competition with a Chamber, with a Vito, with a Sage. And does Harbor have everything over that by being a blend of the two best controllers? I don't know. I think it really depends. So if you do want to do some of the niches here, like you do want to make sure that you can always rely on your cove, or that you can get cheese kills if somebody did get hit by Reckoning, yeah, you can go for that. But not every team is in for it. So there's that. Maybe do this for a premier team. I don't know. But yeah, Harbor on paper is great. Fucking amazing. But there are still downsides of the wall slowing teammates. And I'll be honest, not standing in the right spot hurts Harbor more than other agents, right? Because while a Brim, or like we said, a Viper, can stand, has to be around here, he can do it from here or here. If I want to do the Harbor thing, I have to be here to cover that. I cannot go here and cover it in the same way that I wanted to. Now, that's because most people are going to go, all right, I have to do this. Instead, they have to get used to throwing out the wall starting this way so that you don't do shit against your team instead of immediately doing that. So that also is on players, right? Because there are applications into which you can make it work even if you're standing over here. You just have to be conscious enough to go all the way this way instead of just immediately going, all right, I did it, because your team might want to still go through here. So, still a player skill issue on some aspects, but it's definitely not intuitive which makes Harbor interesting, or I guess painful. But yeah, self team slows, uh, not terribly intuitive, which again, that's not on Riot in that aspect, but still having to be around does make you lose out to Viper and that powerful capability compared to playing anybody else that could take the fifth slot. So yeah, if you like the video, like it. Got a comment from me, comment. And until next time, peace out, my monstrosities.